So Pat Wood is what I call an energy god. And obviously he's a humble Texas dude. He's like, be quiet, Carvallo. You don't know what you're talking about. but you know, he was the chairman of the Public Utility Commission of Texas. And then, you know, he did a great job there. And then eventually he was persuaded to move to D.C. I'm sure that wasn't an easy move. But he was the chairman of FERC. And Pat, you did some cool things looking back. You know, so kind of give us a quick couple of minutes of, you know, things have changed dramatically. And I don't know if it's exactly what you thought it would be today in Texas with competition, but probably pretty close. And you take back, you know, and obviously nationwide, it is kind of reviving in several states, this competition thing. So walk us through monopoly everywhere, no competition. You're in Texas, you go to D.C., give us behind the scenes, talking to W and talking to, how do we convince the country to go this way?
So, thank you, Andres. I'm trying to think how many, it was 26 years ago, no, 25. I got to, my former bosses at FERC, who were chairman all day from Midland, and Jerry Langdon, who was my direct boss at FERC, also from Midland, wrote a letter to George W. Bush, who was the newly elected governor of Texas from Midland. Getting a theme here. I'm from Port Arthur, so we're like the blue collar pairing of Beaumont, Port Arthur, and he was from the white collar pairing of Midland, Odessa. So, needless to say, they wrote a nice letter on my behalf and said, if you want to staff your administration with somebody, we worked with this guy at FERC and you'll love him, or something like that. It was a very lovely letter, which I was surprised, but I was delivered a copy of it after it was sent, so I couldn't walk it back. Anyway, because my dad was kind of embarrassed that I'd worked for 4 years for the government, because he's a small business guy from Port Arthur, very customer-centric, and, you know, having a son on the dole, basically, was just not something where the chin was really, really high. So anyway, George W., third day of office, interviewed me for an opening on the PUC. And I, you know, it was an honor and all that to meet him, and I thought he was such a great guy, and I supported him, of course, in the election, but he propped his boots up on like a ottoman or something. And of course, being from West Texas, his boots are kind of nicely chiseled and have all the little, you know, leather work on it. And I've got kind of plain boots, kind of Southeast Texas looking boots. And anyway, he picked on me from then on, and my nickname was given right then, Woody. But I said, Governor Bush, why do you want to move to competition in telephone and electric? Because those were both the charges under the statute, and the legislature was deep in that 1995 session, deep in the middle of big bills moving toward competition in both. Much more so on the telecom than the electric, actually. So when I got in there, we kind of amped up the electric. So this was February of a legislative session, much like our storm freeze was, you know, those big events kind of happened right at the same time. He said, Pat, I think competition will bring better prices. It'll bring better service. And he had a cell phone on his desk. Of course, they were different looking than the Apples we have now and Androids. But he said, and the technological innovation clearly is something we want and will get. But he said, the real reason why I want competition is because the utilities care more about what we think, and he pointed to House and Senate, and the governor's office is right in the middle of the Capitol. They care more about what we think than what their customers think, and that's wrong. And we're going to change that. And right then and there, I knew it was all about kind of the exact right, and honestly, the only reason why we should move out is it's not a monopoly. Generation was not a monopoly. The legislature later that session basically concluded that in the Senate bill that started wholesale competition here in ERCOT, and pretty much paralleling what was going on at the federal level with the FERC at that time. And then 4 years later, we opened it up to retail competition. Unfortunately, not for munis and co-ops, which I think they paid a price in February that's going to be billed for a long, long time. But we did the 84% solution and got the rest of the state opened up. And anyway, so that's, I went to FERC. We had a blackout. We had California energy crisis. You know, some things don't change.
So you all remember the blackout in August?
'03.
'03.
That took out a quarter of the continent.
So Pat was running the whole show. So walk us through that real quick. What happened there? How many phone calls did you make?
I was touring a LNG facility in Lake Charles, Louisiana, owned by Trunkline Pipeline. Y'all might remember them. Trunkline LNG, which is now, I think Sempra owns it or somebody else owns it in Lake Charles. And it survived last year's version of Ida, which went straight over the top of those two LNG plants in Lake Charles and stuff. Anyway, I was touring that, got a call on my phone, so I stepped out of the tour, and they said, we've got a power outage, and it's over a bunch of states and Canada. So I wrapped up my tour, got back, actually I got to Port Arthur, which is where my mother and father live, so I was doing Good Morning America from my mother's beautiful living room. People are going like, who's that guy in the museum with all the antiques? So we were talking through the grid, and I remember a good friend, Terry Boston, who some of y'all may know Terry. He was the head of TVA for a while and then moved up to be the CEO of PJM. And Terry was just a good guy. He was kind of the runner-up when we picked Sam Jones to run ERCOT. Terry was a VP at Entergy at the time, and he was the second runner-up, and he's always picked on me for not picking him. I said, well, you know, Sam Jones probably could walk on water in Texas. So he was our first ERCOT CEO back in '96. And anyway, so I've known Terry a long time. He called me up later that afternoon that the blackout happened in the Northeast, and he said, Pat, be careful. He said, the data I'm seeing show that there's something a little complicated going on here, so don't get out there. He knows me well enough to know I shoot first, ask questions later, Tom Rose. I've mellowed in my age, but anyway, we did, and I'm glad he did, because
You must be a hunter.
I've hunted a few times. I've got an elk hunt scheduled for later this month. I'm hoping COVID doesn't kill it, but anyway, there was a good. It was good advice, because what caused that blackout was a very interesting series of. Simply, it was bad tree maintenance by First Energy, a utility in Ohio. Vegetation management, which I was, just absolute hellcat for here in Texas, because Entergy kept shorting out all of southeast Texas because of all the ice storms that happened to hit in the late 90s. But the tree maintenance also is a problem in the summer. The lines get really loaded with a lot of energy, serving air conditioning load. Sound familiar? And then they sag into the trees, which are not too far below the line, and then they short out the system. 2 of those shorts happened, and that caused a cascading effect, an uncontrolled outage. And as bad as February was in Texas, at least it was controlled. ERCOT was calling the shots and really saved our grid from going in major imbalance and blackout. So I learned a lot in that blackout.
So then fast forward to Enron days.
Well, actually, I think that was,
Previous?
That was the year before.
The year before.
No, that was the end of '01. So I was at some Ritz-Carlton in Arlington, Virginia, and Enron had sponsored a seminar that I was invited because I was the newly elevated, I think I was chairman, I might have been commissioner, I think I was chairman by then, it might have been a month. And Ken Lay was at the head table, and we had a nice conversation. They had a big seminar on competition, because they were very strong advocates for competition. They ended up not liking our Senate Bill 7 in Texas, because he told the governor right before they voted, I got problems with this bill, and he said, you're too late, it's going. And so people don't know that. Enron actually did not support our final legislation, although the thrust of it clearly was in the right direction for them to open up the market to retail choice. But they were busy advocating that at the time in '96, '97, probably through 2000, with Chairman Bliley from Richmond, Virginia, was the head of the House Commerce Committee, I think it is, and was pushing retail competition as a nationwide. And God, I wished he'd have won, but the skunk came to the party, and it was called California Energy Crisis. Right. So Enron was wrapped up in that, and when Nora Brownell, who some of y'all may know from Pennsylvania, was kind of basically the package deal, I told the Bush folks in D.C., I said, I ain't going up there without an ally. I said, I can probably get 5 votes on the commission, but I sure want them to know I've got a best friend right there who's got my back. So Nora Brownell, and she still does have my back, but she was a great wingman to have up there in those kind of fraught years at FERC. But the California energy crisis, we voted there to put a price cap on the market, which for a Republican boy is not really a nice, easy thing to do, particularly when Vice President Cheney is staring holes through you with those eyes looking over those glasses going like. So it took 2 years for him to invite me to his Christmas party, but he finally smoked the peace pipe with me. No, he understood that when you don't have a functional market, putting a price cap on it is a merciful thing to do, not only for the people, but for the agenda. And California's been very slow to get back to competitive pressures, but it didn't go off the edge. So they're having different issues today, but the Enron thing came after that. Shortly after that, the price cap, I was with a representative from Ralph Nader's organization yesterday on the camera. I said, well, your boss admitted that Nora Brownell and I were the reason the bankruptcy came to Enron, which I don't really want to wear that because I live in Houston and a lot of people got hurt. But I do think that when we kind of called an end to the games in the market, that did have a severe impact on people that had trading books that were long or short or whatever the wrong direction is for that. And so they ended up, that bankruptcy happened really severe and fast, and then it had a very big downdraft impact on competition just in general. People just saw it as all wrapped up together. And so my job really was I felt like the monks in the Middle Ages. Your job is just to keep civilization alive through the dark cold so that we can get to the Renaissance. So we're still waiting for that Renaissance, but I'm seeing a Botticelli and a Giotto and a Michelangelo over that.
So when you look at Texas today, the competitive area of Texas, what do you think? I mean, did we achieve the mission? Because I remember sitting at Austin Energy, listening to the discussions of, our pricing is staggered, our customers get 3 cents per kilowatt if they only consume 500 kilowatt hours, but on average it's 10 cents. And the competitive market at the time before, everything started was like at 12, 11 and a half, 12, 13, but it's now like 7 cents.
7.5. Yesterday, I was looking yesterday, of course, if you look 2 weeks ago, it was over 10 cents because people were thinking we were going to have an August price spike, and we did not. And this is probably a year, and even though I'm in the storage business now, and it would have been nice to have gotten some revenue, I think Texas did not need a summer spike. It ain't over yet. We've had Houston's hottest day actually was September 4th of some year, but I think looking at the weather and the wind forecast ahead, which is really the 2 things you have to look at. How hot's it going to get, and is there going to be much wind that day? And that's going to become a more and more important calculation as we don't add more gas to our grid, but we add more load. And so that delta's got to be filled by wind and solar. Solar's been great. Solar has performed beautifully. Wind has performed as it does. It's slow in the winter, and it's slow in the summer, and it's great the rest of the year. And it's great at night, pretty much when I think everybody's going to be charging their cars in the future. But, I would say, I was asked that question this morning. I spoke to a Dallas business group this morning, and, I said there's kind of 3 things I look at. Cost, cleanliness, I said cheap, clean, and reliable. We knocked it out of the park on cheap. We went from 26th most expensive state in the nation to 43rd. So now, of course, some of that is due to gas staying pretty cheap and plentiful out of West and South Texas. But, the competitive market, it works just like the economist said it would, like I advocated. I'm not surprised because I do think when multiple people are pushing margins down, you take a lot lower margin in a competitive market. I was chairman of Dynegy, which was an independent power producer that later merged into Vistra. But we were happy to get a 3% return on equity when, I regulated the utilities. they were crying if I didn't give them a 16% pre-tax return on equity. So that delta right there is a bunch of savings for customers on generation. Generation had been the biggest part of the bill up to now, and I think the generation competition, which is not just retail. Retail pushed it down, but the wholesale market's ruthlessly competitive. I mean, even to the point where at Dynegy, we did not want to buy into this market. But we did at a fire sale when Engie got out of this market. We bought their gas and one coal plant. But it's I think so on that home run. On cleanliness, I would say it far exceeded what I thought. We put in a renewable portfolio standard in the 1999 competition bill. And, we said, we're going to shoot to get 2,000 new megawatts of clean energy and renewable. And at that time, it really was all about wind because solar wasn't in the picture. And with all these holes in the ground, you think we'd figure out geothermal too. But I guess that's coming. But 2,000, and then the legislature came back and said, wow, that a lot of people came and built wind farms. So they moved it to 5,000, and folks were at 28,000 today. So we're now the number 5 nation in the world on renewable energy on our grid, and that's who, and it's
unbelievable. It's an unbelievable story.
It has its challenges. I think the grid, I don't think in February had much to do with the fact that wind doesn't blow because we weren't counting on it anyway. But
so not for the record, but February.
Well, that's my third book, which is reliable, and I think we got a big ass black eye for that.
We did.
We did. We had a warning in 2011, right. And I wasn't there then. We had moved back to Houston, and I can't remember what I was doing in 2011, but I think I was working with a company right up the street here, which unfortunately is no longer in business, but Extreme Power was a storage company was incubated by the Governor Perry's kind of entrepreneurship fund. So we were a little early to the game, but I do have an Audrey Zibelman angle on that I'll mention here when we mentioned our honoree. But that 2011 freeze was a pretty impactful event. FERC and NERC, under new FERC authority and a more empowered NERC, came in and did a really thorough study about what happened. What happened is we ended up having an event like the one we had here. It was shorter in duration by about a day, not quite as cold as far as like depth, but it covered most of the state, most of ERCOT for sure. But the curtailments that ERCOT ordered were about 1/4, so about 5,000 megawatts were ordered to be rolled outages, and they did actually roll, unlike the ones this year, for about 6 hours. This was up to 20,000 megawatts got rolled this year over 3.5, 4 days. So significantly bigger deal this time around. But 2011 was our wake-up call, and I think there's a lot of remorse, certainly at the legislature, among the former commissioners, that we didn't do more than require reports. Mm-hmm. So the legislature more than made up for that this time around. I mean, there's some issues they left unaddressed, but not weatherization.
Right. Yeah. And I think if you look back, really, it's for everybody who doesn't know the details. I mean, I think the grid performed as it should have. ERCOT did not have a blackout. They managed to stay out of a blackout, which would have been a total disaster. The brownouts impacted only 4 million people versus 26 million. That would have been the blackout. Recovering from the blackout, everybody says, oh, it'll take a couple of days to recover from the blackout. Believe me, as a utility guy, no. It would have taken a month to recover from the blackout.
We're seeing that next door. New Orleans has got, and then now that was a very different deal. It was a transmission outage, much like happened with the wildfires in California. Those are infrastructure issues. And, we have hurricane issues. When I was out for 17 days during Hurricane Ike, when that big storm hit Houston back in 2008. So that infrastructure, but people, the thing that I wear though, and I have remorse for this time around, is that we had so much surplus energy back in the day when I was here that we didn't really do that kind of we planned for Y2K like it was going to be the end of the world. But we didn't do the kind of things that would have helped today. And the biggest one that comes to mind is really overseeing utility outage management. And, you know, it's just such a rare event that we've had to curtail. We've never curtailed. I don't know if any power pool has curtailed 20 gigawatts of load within, 10 hours. But, to have to manage that when you've got a hospital or a jail or water treatment plant or just all of the above on a feeder, everybody else who's on that feeder is kind of protected too. So you end up protecting, 75% of your load. Well, there's not much you can, when ERCOT says you got to cut center point, you got to cut, 5,000 megawatts, you're going, I got to turn people off and leave them off. So people froze because we didn't have the ability to roll those outages. Again, I think a lot of the other things that happened that day, I told somebody it was like playing poker. You pick up your hand and you got 4 deuces and you go like, okay, it's 4 of a kind, but it's a crappy 4 of a kind. There's no aces anywhere in sight. We had all 2s, and we had, 3rd coldest weather in the century. Not a lot of notice to the customers either. I know more about somebody.
That was a big failure, I think.
Yeah, just
that could have been fixed better, easier.
Even though the highway signs we've got now that tell you that some man from Plano, Texas, driving a Toyota Tundra is a silver alert. I know more about. I drove up to Dallas Sunday and I saw a couple of amber alerts and then a silver alert. I said, man, we know more about single people that are lost in Texas than we did that we were going to have a storm that had all 254 counties under winter storm warning, and the first snow in Brownsville since 1896, I think. I mean, that's a big storm.
Yeah.
But we didn't really know. I mean, I knew about it because I'm in the business.
Right.
And y'all probably did, some of y'all. Yeah. But it wasn't, so we didn't have that. It was cold. The plants were, some of the plants were not really winterized to hit the 2011 standard, which should have been done.
Yeah.
So the commission actually just this week published a rule that said all the power plants have to be standardized to what happened in 2011. And we'll probably do more, but we're going to do that now, stick it in the sand, and get at least that good, which I think was actually a pragmatic, good first step, but really picking up the game for our generators, because our system doesn't work if the backbone is weak.
Right.
The rest of the body falls apart, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
Other things, too. I think the interface with the natural gas system is just fraught with peril. I mean, I've worked at the Railroad Commission, and I understand it's a very loosely regulated industry. But, when you have that happen and the PUC suspends market operations and sets the price at $9,000, hoping to entice more generation to come on, there was no generation to be had. So that was probably, looking back, a futile effort that ended up costing a bunch of money. But, you had gas people selling gas, which was scarce at the time as well, just had to look at 9,000, look at the heat rate of who they were selling to and setting the price at 900. If you had a 10 heat rate, you're paying me 900 an MCF for what was yesterday $3 gas. Right. I would love to be on a jury if that got to decide if that was price gouging or not. But again, my Republican credentials have taken a real beating this last year when I watched what unbridled markets do. But I've never been a proponent for markets without rules, and some rules were needed. And our state, the legislature, did a good thing. I mean, they said, PUC, go figure out the details, but here's what you got to do, which is what they told me 20 years ago. Pat, we want a market. We want to protect customers. We want a lot of customer education. We want reliability. Go figure it out. And so that's what they just told the PUC to do in a whole new arena this year. And I'm actually pretty hopeful that the kind of things that this group cares about with regard to really pushing from the substation to the meter is that whole area is just getting ready to open up. Yeah. I mean, I'm putting batteries on the meter side of the substation.
Yeah, tell us, what are you doing on the Hunt Energy Network?
We're putting 10 megawatt batteries all over Texas, and I want to put them at the substations on the distribution side, because it's supposed to be faster and cheaper. We're working with our utility friends on that.
Sure.
But, you know, somebody told me long ago, pioneers get shot and settlers get the land. Well, we're the pioneer, unfortunately, on this one, and we're taking a few bullets. But it'll work out. But I was really happy that, I don't know if John's going to be able to make it, but Jon Wellinghoff did.
No, he unfortunately last minute could not make it. He canceled last night.
So John was my successor at FERC, and he was appointed by President Bush to one of the Democrat spots. And then when Obama came in, Obama plucked him to be chairman of the commission. He ended up serving longer than I did. I think he was 5 years, I was 4. But he from the very beginning was very focused on demand side issues, on distributed energy issues. Coming from Nevada, had a really good depth in solar energy, and just thought through things in a real creative way that, you know, people say, oh, well, FERC doesn't regulate that. It's like, well, yes, it does, and the Supreme Court actually agreed with him in a big decision that came out just in the past couple of years that FERC does have the ability to set the standards for all the small resources and for demand response to participate in the nationwide markets. And that was a big step, and it's a big realization that we've now moved from these big central grids where you've got the big, you know, I drove past the Fayette power plant going to Austin the other day, and I remember when it was built in the 70s. Those big plants that are the backbone of our grid still, pushing power from there outward. That one-way flow day is now over. We've got two-way flow. I looked at my app today. It's pretty sunny in Houston, so Woodhouse dumped some solar energy on the grid today. My battery filled up, and it still had more to go. So, you know, it's not much, but, you know, over time, you see a lot of people. That decentralization of power is going to be, it's happening culturally, politically, economically, but it's also happening on the grid. And it's an interesting trend. And, you know, I've always kind of viewed you guys were out there before, you were digital and distributed before anybody was. And may it ever be. I think that creates a system that not only is much more democratic, but I think it's going to be more resilient, too.
More resilient, absolutely, totally. It's like the internet. The internet never goes down because there are so many nodes, and that's what we need.
Well, I was in the highway equivalent of that today. I have a Tesla now. The little map kind of rerouted me at the last minute. I got to Georgetown, and all of a sudden, I-35 in Austin got red, so it routed me around 130. And then something happened so I was going to dump back in up there near Buda, or I think Kyle up there, wherever 130 hits. And then some wreck happened south of that on 35, so it routed me on 80. So I went kind of around, came in San Marcos that way, and I knew I was hauling ass to get here by 4:30, and then I got here at 4:26. So thanks to the rerouting nodes of the highway system, which you never think of that being 21st century, but we do have a good highway system in the state.
So I know we want to say a few things about, but why don't we watch that video that we put together about her life? Look at that, the Honorable Padwood III. Good looking picture there. You haven't changed much, by the way.
It's the mileage, not the years.
I know. Are we ready for the video on her life story? Run it.
Audrey Zibelman attended Penn State University, where she received her Bachelor of Arts, and later attended Hamline University School of Law, where she received her Doctor of Law. Audrey Zibelman leads X's Moonshot for the Electric Grid. The modeling and analytic tools that are relied on to design and operate the power systems were developed for a different era and are proving to be no longer sufficient for the fast-transitioning decarbonized, decentralized power system. Audrey's team is working with leading utilities, system operators, and other industry players worldwide to design and develop the new computational tools enabled by artificial intelligence and machine learning required to model, simulate, and operate a decarbonized grid with a shared objective to accelerate secure, affordable, and equitable grid decarbonization worldwide. Audrey has spent over 3 decades leading organizations with the goal of making power cleaner, more affordable, and more reliable. She is an international expert in power systems transformation, regulation, markets, and operations. She has also been a utility executive, regulator, system operator, and entrepreneur. Audrey joined X from the Australian energy market operator, where she was managing director and CEO. AEMO plans and operates the electricity and gas systems and markets for Australia. While at AEMO, Audrey oversaw AEMO's development of market for consumer-owned distributed resources and integrated systems plan that established the accepted roadmap for Australia to decarbonize its national power system and implemented new processes for safe operations of the power system during extreme climate events, including bushfires and major heat storms. Along with other grid operators internationally, Audrey founded the Global Power Systems Transformation Organization, which has received recent support from the Biden administration to support directed research into their grid decarbonization. Audrey also sat on the Energy Security Board, the entity charged with regulatory and market reform for Australia, and served as an energy advisor to the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, CSIRO, Australia's national science and research agency, where she advised on innovation and technology development and deployment. Prior to joining AEMO, Audrey was the chair of the New York Public Service Commission, where she was a member of the governor's cabinet and oversaw electric, gas, water, steam, and communication utilities in New York. While in New York, Audrey oversaw massive regulatory reform of the electric industry to support a decarbonized grid known as Reforming the Energy Vision, or REV. Audrey also served as the executive vice president and COO at PJM and oversaw the operator's growth from 5 to 13 states and development of demand-side markets. She also served as an executive at Xcel Energy, where she developed the utility's first renewable development programs and was the founder and CEO of Veridity Energy, an organization that, among other things, integrates batteries as resources on the grid. Along with her executive roles, Audrey has served on multiple boards with the responsibility of overseeing and advising on grid modernization. She currently serves as the non-executive board member on EOS Energy, a long-storage battery company, Advanced Energy Economy, the Gridwise Alliance, and the Monash University Energy Advisors Committee. And for all these reasons, we are today inducting Audrey Zibelman into the Digital 360 Summit Hall of Fame.
That's a great video.
She really has an amazing career, and I know she's not done like you're not done, but it's really fascinating, and before we go to her, because she really couldn't be
Thank
here.
you.
Couldn't be here either, but we're about to listen to her acceptance. But real quick, a couple things on Audrey.
So when I was a just brand new chairman of FERC, she walks into my office, and she had been an executive at Xcel Energy, which owns Southwest Public Service in Amarillo, but is headquartered in Minneapolis, has the utility serving most of Colorado as well. So it's a nice, big, spread out utility. But they were trying to implement the FERC's agenda to unbundle or to take out the transmission business from the regulated utility business and run it like a standalone business. And she really had guts. I mean, it was an early effort. It ended up not being exactly what she wanted, but it became part of MISO. But the backbone of Xcel, she really was thinking about, and really, it's been fun to follow her career, because she did the Veridity thing, which was long before anybody thought about kind of the aggregation of demand side and of storage and of just distributed energy resources. We all talk about that now like it's our next door neighbor, but she was talking about it before anybody could even think what it was. When I was with Extreme Power, we went up there because I liked what she was talking about publicly about storage and those things. And of course, we had small storage and big plants as well. And we went up there to just see if we could do a business deal in Philadelphia. So we were at the top of this tall tower in Philadelphia in her little conference room. It was a pretty lean operation, but Audrey's going to be pretty tight with other people's money, which I've always liked about her. But we looked, and it had the vertical, for the windows, these shades that are vertical. And all of a sudden, they just started to sway. And so the guy I was with from Extreme, and I got up and looked. There was a hotel pool right across the street. It was downtown Philly. And we saw this water just sloshing out of the pool. And we go, holy crap, there's an earthquake going on. So I was in her office the day of the East Coast earthquake, which ended up cracking the Washington Monument. It was closed for the next 8 years to get repaired. But we ended up going down the stairwell, and she was real calm and cool. But I've always thought, you always remember who you're with those moments of kind of personal peril. But I was with Audrey Zibelman. I hadn't seen her in 3D since, but we've talked on the phone many times. But I just got to say, as an American, I'm really proud that someone of her stature and knowledge, character, was an ambassador for our country to what I think is probably the second coolest country on earth, which is Australia. And, you know, to go down there and she had a deep impact. And this video looks like a puff piece, but it happens to be true. I think even her strongest critics in Australia would acknowledge, you know, that she took everything she learned at PJM, which is a kind of ERCOT on steroids, a very well-run power grid. She was in the political realm under Governor Cuomo at New York and just kept her eye on the ball, which was regulating the utilities and helping them kind of get into the new era of more competitive distribution side. So that REV of hers was kind of a shock at the time. Even I was shocked. I'm like, oh, you're going to ruin retail competition. But they really stepped it up to a new level. And it'd be interesting to probably delve deeper into the success of that after she left, but it was a real dynamo. And I really, you know, think the future belongs to those people like her who think outside the box and not only think out there, but work out of it and
Absolutely.
make it happen. So she's at Google now. You know, what they're doing at Google is transformative. I was there talking to that team and her but before she got there, they were kind of getting ready for her to come, but I was in California and they were so excited and I kind of gave her the same spiel I just did now. I was like, you're lucky because, you know, there aren't many like her. And so I'm honored to be in her company. So
Yeah.
thank you for including me today.
Absolutely, Pat. Let's turn around here and listen to her acceptance speech. She was very kind. We spent some time together. She looks fabulous. So go ahead and roll it.
Thank you, John and Pat and Andre and everyone involved in putting together the Digital 360 Summit. I am truly honored for your recognition, and I have to say I'm a bit humbled by it as well. I'm especially honored to be part of a summit hosted by Carvallo because, as all of us are familiar, he is known as the godfather of smart energy, particularly because of his groundbreaking work in Austin. And I'm also honored to have been recommended for this award by two of the gentlemen that I respect most in this industry, former Chairman Pat Wood and Jon Wellinghoff. I'm really sorry that I can't be with you today. I really would have liked to have been there to visit with everyone, particularly during the pandemic. It's really hard to give up any opportunity to see people in person, and I wish you all well during the conference. I have to say that being here for me today is a little bit like celebrating the arc of the power industry over the last 35 years. When I first met Pat Wood, when he was elected to be chairman of FERC, we were just at the beginning of really trying to make markets work in the United States, particularly wholesale markets, because we all recognize that introducing competition and the competitive pressures and neutrality we could achieve through independent system operation and formation of markets, we would benefit consumers. And sort of, I would say everyone saw that, but a few incumbents who were a bit challenged, but I think we got most of them there. But the biggest thing is that Pat's groundbreaking work in the formation of the markets is what led the industry into the 21st century, both in the US, and I think it's not really recognized internationally. And what we learn through markets is that through innovation, through collaboration, through independence, we can drive huge amount of efficiencies and changes. And in fact, I remember, and I know there are challenges today, but at one point it became really clear that through markets, we can interconnect renewables and certainly added the dimension of storage much more readily than we could through more standardized vertical regulated entities. And that's because we gave an opportunity for people to have better information, better access, and better tools. And that really was critical as we got to the next stage of the markets, which were led by Jon Wellinghoff. And we started adding demand response, and we recognized that by including demand into the equation, we can make the markets even more efficient. And we can drive even better value to consumers. And we could also look for innovation in terms of transmission and the work that John did there, and certainly, again, the extension of how storage has to play a critical role in the 21st century grid. And so, when I look back, I think about all of those efforts, which I know were a hard slog, and there's probably lots of trees killed along the way with all the documentation we did. But the success of those regulatory transformations really did contribute to where we were today. Without question, by introducing competition into the wholesale markets, we saw those significant benefits of innovation, but we also saw the importance of getting better information and better collaboration as elements to drive us towards the future of the power systems. And I don't think we can envision how we could tackle what Secretary Granholm has called the moonshot for the 21st century, the decarbonization of the power system, without this groundbreaking reform on how we introduce innovation into the power sector. So for me, I think that we have to say that achieving decarbonization is only going to happen because we took these steps. And then more importantly, my recent experience in Australia, where we are seeing decarbonization happen faster than almost anywhere else in the world, and at the same time, the complexity of managing a power system in the midst of massive climate change, that through this next piece is not only is the process of digitalization as an essential vehicle to achieve it. So it's markets, innovation, and now digitalization. And the reason for that, I think, is there's multiple, but I picked the top four. The first is we have to get visibility into the whole of the system. Now that we know that we have to manage renewable generation, storage, distributed energy resources, it's really becoming a mechanism that we need to make sure see the whole of the system. As a regulator, we used to always talk about information asymmetry. But the fact is that information asymmetry assumes that one player, in that case the utility, had all the information it needed. But as a matter of fact, nobody has all the information they needed, and in fact our tools are incapable of providing that. And so we need to improve that. And through digitalization and the better use of data, and a better ability to use both hardware and software on the system, we're going to be able to get these whole of system views, which will drive efficiency. The second is we absolutely have to introduce machine learning and artificial intelligence throughout the network. We are going from hundreds of thousands of generators to billions of devices that are going to have to be optimized and orchestrated. We can't do that with the tools that we've had historically, but also we can't do it with a command and a control approach to the dispatch of generation. There's just too much information. With advanced artificial intelligence and machine learning, we have the ability to look at automation for quicker response and certainly more security in the grid as a whole. So it's going to be critical that we give the tools to both the grid operators, system operators, and everyone across the value chain to get there. And in a way, we have to think about it that for the 21st century grid and for the decarbonized grid, really data is the fuel of the future, because it's through this information and how we use weather as our largest fuel source that we're going to be able to achieve what we need to achieve. So it's a big data problem. It's a problem that AI and ML are particularly suited to help us solve. And it's a way, frankly, for us to make it easier for the people who actually have to operate the system and make sure that it's responding the way it needs to. The other piece is that I think digitalization is going to be really important to solve the efficiency and equity issues. We simply need to move faster. We can't create leave-behinds in the future of the green energy grid like we have the digital divide, and we have to solve it from the beginning. To do that means driving costs out of the system wherever we can, but more importantly, allowing for fast learnings whenever we can. And through digitalization, virtualization, simulation, we have all the capability to make sure there are no leave-behinds. And that really brings me to what I think is the urgency and for me, the eagerness of why I left the energy industry and joined X, the Moonshot Factory. In my new role, I really get to sit on a perch of taking a look around how can we use the best of what we know about digitalization, about AI, about simulation, about machine learning to really support the future of the power system. For that reason, we're working hard with industry partners to start to explore and develop the data acquisition tools we're going to need to get that full of system view, the visualization capabilities we're going to need to make it easy, the models we're going to need to speed up how we get things solved, optimization that looks across things, not just price and security, but also emission reduction, resiliency, all the elements, and certainly services. And then the simulation so that we can test the what ifs, so we could see what will happen, so we could see into the future a bit better and make sure that we have a single source of truth that can be then shared and speed up the process of integrating and transforming the grid. We need to make sure, and that's our focus, is that the people who have to make decisions, whether it's government decisions or policy-making decisions or system operator decisions, they all have and investors and renewable developers, they have the information they need to be able to act with confidence and that there is that sense of integrity in the information we're all using. That's why, I'm really pleased to actually be here. I think that as we move forward with decarbonization, it's the work of 360, it's the work of all of you thinking about how we use the best we can of merging everything we know about power systems, all the hardware we're going to need, and the software and analytic capabilities we're going to need to really run the most complex machine in the world, and not just here, but everywhere. So thank you very much for giving me this honor. I really wish I were there because I'm sure not only is the discussions very interesting, but also all the side conversations that I'm really sorry to be missing. And I look forward to seeing all of you in the near future. And thank you again, Pat and John, and Andre. I'm deeply honored. Thanks.